I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for...
The FOMO Show.
Broadcasting to you from Brisbane, Australia.
And from a dank pub in the middle of southeast England, this is The FOMO Show.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the podcast where you'll hear about cryptocurrency in plain English. If you're excited about cryptocurrency but you don't have time to read white papers or technical presentations or any other manner of long-winded stuff, this is the podcast for you. Yeah, so Joe, you're coming to us from the UK today, aren't you?
Yeah, so we're currently on the line. It's about 11:45 in the morning here, and I'm sitting in a lovely pub in the southwest of England. There's horse racing on the TV and people drinking alcohol, and I am on the Red Bull train this week. But yes, I'm here for a couple of weeks and just to catch up with some family. And yeah, interesting way to try co-presenting a show from a pub.
Yeah, so we apologise for the Skype quality in advance, but look, it was either get Joe on his phone in a pub or not do it at all, and we still want to get the FOMO Show out every 2 weeks. Yeah, just listen to me. No one wants to listen. Just listen to me, mate.
Oh man, but, I'm looking forward to hearing that interview. Actually, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, it was a really good interview, and look, Chris is from the UK as well, so I actually kind of felt like I was talking to you in a little way, man. I think had we have got both of you on the, had we've got you doing the interview, it would have been quite interesting.
Yeah, it would have been very hard to tell apart.
Yeah. Did you get to you didn't get to the Dash conference or the Bitcoin conference when you were in London?
No, but it's amazing. There's so much going on, so close by. I mean, just for equivalent of $100 train ticket, I could have been in and visited a few of the things. There are quite a few different things on which it's quite alive here. Ironically, there are so many things going on for blockchain in Europe, but at the same time, it's so hard to withdraw your bitcoins in this country. So interesting. You've got the tech, but not the financial infrastructure.
Yeah. I think Chris was talking about some of that as well, and he was saying that that there's quite a prominent law firm, like a crypto law firm, that are currently talking with the UK government about the regulation and about relaxing a fair bit of it. I don't know if they're going to have any luck, because I know here in Australia they've tried, and for all their good intentions, they just seem to butt up against the old establishment every time they really try and push something through. But mate, I mean, it would be great, like, because you look at just the amount of innovation, especially like in the UK. There's a lot of stuff coming out of there at the moment, and it just seems to be such a disconnect between what you can do in the physical world and what you can do in the blockchain world.
Yeah, so today we're going to be running through a couple of bits of news, some coming out of Sweden, an update to the Whoppercoin story, and then we're going into one tool that Matt's come across this week, and then we've had an interview. So who did you interview this week?
Yeah, mate, so I had a great interview with Chris Coney, who's the founder of the Cryptoversity. He runs the Cryptoverse podcast, and he's also the Chief Technical Officer at Kexcoin, which is the ICO we covered in the last episode. So we've
amazing. What did you guys cover?
We basically covered a bit about how he got into the world of crypto and what he does, and then we covered the Kexcoin ICO. We were able to ask him a few of the questions that we raised in the last episode, and just find out a fair bit more about the project. And I got to admit, it actually got me more excited for the project than when we first started. And then, we also just discussed the general, regulatory environment around ICOs at the moment. So it's a really interesting interview. I'd recommend you guys stick around and listen to it all in its entirety because I really enjoyed doing it, and Chris is a very interesting person, and he was a great guest. I really enjoyed chatting to him.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it.
Cool, mate. So what's in the news this week?
Well, I read an article about a week ago about Burger King, who we mentioned, had issued a Whopper coin, sort of a loyalty card token built off the Waves platform. We were talking about that on the last episode, and now this week they've been dragged in front of the Russian regulator to explain exactly what Whopper coin is, because it seems there are a few people in the Russian government who don't quite understand what it is. And they're wondering how to approach it. So yeah, they've been dragged in front of the Russian regulator and forced to explain what they do. So that's an interesting piece, and that came out of Altcoin today. But nothing too serious, nothing that suggests that it's been banned. But it's an interesting piece of news. And for the people who missed last time around, it essentially if you spend a bunch of money in Burger King in Russia, then you'll be rewarded in Whopper coins, which you can then use to purchase Whoppers or other burgers on the fantastic Burger King menu. So it's a really interesting idea, and the tokens are able to be exchanged between people via the Burger King app, or by the looks of it, over the Waves platform. So yeah, it's an interesting concept, but yeah, no wonder the Russian regulators want to find out more.
Yeah, maybe they just want to get all the tokens for themselves, so they can get free.
They just want to get on the action. And what's been happening in Sweden?
Yeah, mate. So read a really interesting article this week from Cointelegraph, and it looks like Sweden is talking about going fully digital with their currency. So per Cointelegraph, it says Sweden is fast moving to follow through on its plans to become the world's first cashless society. While this is seen as a good sign for digital currencies on a new progressive frontier, it brings issues such as privacy concerns when every transaction is surveyed. Nevertheless, the country is still rooting for Bitcoin as the answer to provide an anonymity similar to the traditional cash system. Sweden, along with other Scandinavian countries such as Norway and Denmark, have long said no to cash. As previously reported, the Chamber of Commerce of Denmark has already proposed to allow most retailers, except for essential services like hospitals, post office and the like, to ensure that all financial transactions are done electronically and essentially ban cash. And in fact, the article goes on to say that the Danish government has actually set a 2030 deadline to completely do away with paper money.
Wow.
So yeah, mate, just like considering this article, I mean, what it seems like is it does seem quite positive at first. Government proposing to go fully digital with their cash system, but I just didn't see much in there in the way of actual cryptocurrency. Like, I know that some of them are talking about maybe doing a Bitcoin, but it seems like most of it's just talking about just having completely online transactions. And I mean, the issue with that is that at the moment, governments can control the flow of cash. Like, the central bank controls it vicariously, but they can't really track the flow of cash. Whereas with the digital currencies in the banks, they can track that. They can track what amount of money you have in your bank account, for example. So what it seems from a cynical point of view is that the governments just want to be able to track everything, and they want to do away with cash because that would mean that no one can transact without the government having access to those transactions.
What you also wonder is what that's going to do to the foreign exchange sort of business. Every time you go through an international airport, there's always this foreign exchange desk where it's like trade this currency for that currency, but what's going to happen is what will happen? You put some sort of physical currency from one country to this foreign exchange, and then they give you a digital receipt and say, okay, it's in a paper wallet. How would they put it in some kind of a wallet? It's going to be an interesting world out there.
Yeah, and it just kind of shows how. I mean, if they're talking about doing something completely digital, how ridiculous the idea of even having a national currency is. You know, I mean, the reason that national currencies are a thing at the moment is because they each have different notes and they're each denominated from that country. But if you're going fully digital, why even have those barriers? Why even have someone having to exchange their currency into your currency when we have this thing now called cryptocurrency, which eliminates the borders, you know? It would make a lot more sense just for the government to say, look, bring whatever you want in, you know, bring your Bitcoin, bring your Ethereum. We're just going to transact in that now. So yeah, I wonder whether they're looking at they may look at doing a blockchain currency, but it may be backed by them. And I guess you might be able to exchange either your crypto or your real world digital money for that currency, that digital currency. Yeah, it's funny, the last couple of weeks since our last episode, there's been a whole bunch of celebrities coming out both supporting and bashing Bitcoin. And one of the more hilarious ones I found was the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belford. He came to Jamie Dimon's defense, and he said he's right about what he's saying about Bitcoin. So this is per CoinDesk. It says, I'm not saying cryptocurrencies that there won't be one. There will be one, but there has to be some backing by some central governments out there. He added, sooner or later, a central bank or a consortium is going to issue their own currency, cryptocurrency, and that's what will take hold. Yeah, so for those of you guys that don't know, Jamie Dimon, who he's supporting, is the CEO of JP Morgan, and he's the guy that called Bitcoin a fraud. And yeah, it was a little ironic hearing that because, I mean, JP Morgan was very complicit in the last financial crisis, and they were one of the organizations that were deemed too big to fail. So yeah, it's interesting that he's saying that, and then you've got the Wolf of Wall Street, who made a living being a fraud, coming to the defense of another. Yeah, it just seems like they're all coming to each other's defense over this Bitcoin thing.
You can see in a way where they're coming from now, obviously, they're both non-technical people who are probably been briefed quite highly on this stuff. But it's what they said. The attitude that I seem to pick up, especially after reading that Wolf of Wall Street article, is that reading that Jordan Belfort piece, the way he's describing it, it's almost like he's describing it as right now where we are in cryptocurrencies is the dot-com bubble. I have a feeling he said something like, he's not saying it's a totally terrible thing, but I think he was saying that right now it looked like it's in that dot-com bubble stage.
Yeah.
And even if you'd bought after the dot-com bubble burst, and you look at the growth till now, it's still been a success, but there is the initial huge bubble. So potentially that's what they're concerned about. But nevertheless, keep your eyes open, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, look, he's not entirely wrong. Like, you got to give him some credit. Like, it probably will be the case that people will feel a lot safer if a central bank says we're going to issue a cryptocurrency and we want you to jump on board. Simply because that's what they've known, up until no one has lived, at least in the Western world, has lived in a system where a central bank doesn't issue the currency. Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, mate, it's the establishment, it's old money. You can't expect much more from people that have grown up making a living on Wall Street.
So there was another piece of news that came out the other week. I think I first read about it on Torrent Freak. There was a bit of JavaScript executing on the Pirate Bay's website. Now, the Pirate Bay, for any of you good chaps out there, will know that it's for acquiring copyrighted files, or actually just finding torrent files that you can download peer-to-peer shared files. And this website has supported itself with ads for years and years, but a number of the target audience, most of the target audience who use it, have ad blockers on. So the Pirate Bay are struggling to make revenue. So now they've put a little script on the site which basically uses your CPU power to mine Bitcoins for the Pirate Bay when you're visiting their website. And it's a very interesting idea.
Yeah. So I think it was Monero they were actually mining, not Bitcoin.
Okay.
And I
Ah,
think the reason for that is because it's a private coin, so that it's not
right.
publicly listed
Okay.
on any kind of chain. So I think they'd be concerned about compromising themselves.
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
yeah, like it was it was a
Okay.
novel idea. They did get called out on it.
Yeah.
Eventually, someone dug through the torrents and found it, and they said, "Oh, this is." It was all just a big test. We were just testing to see whether it would work. Um, but to think that no one would notice that, when they visited the Pirate Bay, that their CPU power went significantly up. I mean, I've got one that sits on the side of my monitor, and I can see what it's doing all the time. So
Mm.
yeah, but Showtime did
A
it too,
very good
didn't they,
idea if
Joe?
you run a high traffic website. At Showtime, did you say?
Yeah, Showtime did it as well, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So Showtime, that's a TV company, isn't it? They produce TV shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did read a headline about that, but I didn't see how they built it in.
No, neither did I. I haven't looked deep enough into the Showtime one, but from what I saw, they haven't actually admitted that they were doing it yet either.
Right.
Whereas
Okay.
Pirate Bay at least came out and said, "Yeah, okay, you got us. We were just trying to make a bit of money."
What it makes you wonder is if there's some web development engineer, some random high traffic website. Imagine you're a web development guy and you work at 9gag.com, just looking after the infrastructure there. It would be so tempting just to put a little bit of JavaScript on and point that at your own, Monero wallet and just start getting that traffic, making some money for you. Something tells me this is going to go. We're going to see some more little examples pop up, and the actual website owners not having the first clue about it.
Yeah, well, it may actually already be happening. This might just be the two of them that have been found out. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
One to watch. Yeah. So for anybody who's worried that this might happen to them, the way that you can avoid this is to disable JavaScript in your browser. However, that can really make your browsing experience much less enjoyable. But that seems to be the only way that you can stop it from happening.
So, mate, I saw another article. I think you linked it to me, actually. There's one guy that's allegedly made billions on Ethereum trading, and that came up on Zero Hedge. And what it says is the former Fortress principal, Michael Novogratz, left the firm's colossal macro hedge fund almost 2 years ago, but has been discussing investments in virtual currencies since 2013 when he told a UBS conference, "Put a little money in Bitcoin, come back in a few years, and it's going to be worth a lot." He was, of course, correct. Bitcoin was trading around 200 at the time, and as recently as 3 weeks ago was worth 5,000. Novogratz has had a really good run. Aside from his epic call on Bitcoin, he's done extremely well on Ethereum. As Bloomberg details, it started with a late 2015 visit to a friend's startup in Brooklyn. "I expected to see Joe, a dog, and one assistant," he said. "Instead, I saw 30 dynamic young people crammed into a Bushwick warehouse, coding, talking on the phone, and making plans for this revolution. Macro guys are instinctive. My instinct was, I want to buy a chunk of this company." He decided instead to invest in Ether, the cryptocurrency token used on Ethereum network. Novogratz bought about 500,000 at less than $1 per Ether and left on a vacation to India. By the time he returned a few weeks later, the price had risen more than fivefold, and then he bought more. Over the course of 2016 and 2017, as Ether surged to almost 400 and Bitcoin topped 2,500, Novogratz sold enough to make about $250 million, the biggest haul of any single trade in his career. He said he paid tax on the profits, bought a Gulfstream G550 jet, and donated an equal amount to a philanthropic project for criminal justice reform. He then started a hedge fund and put in it's $500 million worth just for crypto, and I think he put in $150 million of his own. And he says, "This is going to be the largest bubble of our lifetimes. Prices are going to get way ahead of where they should be. You can make a whole lot of money on the way up, and we plan on it." And Zero Hedge goes on to say, and bubble or not, Novo, as his friends call him, concluded eloquently on the extreme nature of cryptocurrency's potential. "Remember, bubbles happen around things that fundamentally change the way we live," he said. "The railroad bubble. Railroads really fundamentally changed the way we live. The internet bubble changed the way we live. When I look forward 5-10 years, the possibilities really get your animal spirits going."
Wow, that's a real trade he's made on that.
I like how we went all the way back to the railroad bubble in that, like it sounds like he recognizes that the market, I mean, you'll hear it later in this interview we did with Chris, we talked about the euphoria around a lot of this stuff, and it really seems to be the way, like there's a lot of people piling into this space, a lot of speculative money, and yeah, it may, it's why you need to consider what you're going to invest and be careful about it, but yeah, like he's even if it turns out to be a bubble, it's kind of a bubble we need to have. Like it will change the way things are done.
Awesome. So I heard that you were exploring a new tool this week. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, mate. So it's called Coinergy. I've actually been looking at it for a while, and what it does, it lets you dig deeper into market trends, as well as to trade your assets on exchanges. It does that all in one program, or one web-based program. You can find it at coinergy.com. And what it does, when you get into it, it's quite overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff that pops up on the screen, but it does step you through it all in kind of like a tutorial. It's like a visual tutorial. And what you can do is you can take a deeper look into the markets. So you can actually, for example, overlay statistics from multiple coins and exchanges in one graph over each other. So let's say I want to look at the price of PIVX, for the last 3 months. You can then overlay, and that's on Bittrex. You can then overlay the price of Bitcoin on Coinbase for the last 3 months in the background on that program, and then you can add a few other factors. You can add the volume, and there's a whole bunch of different tools, and so you can not only see what the currencies are doing, but you can also compare them to other currencies and other charting methods, and it's quite powerful when you get it all set up.
Is there a way of tracking your own trades with this?
Yeah. So you can actually plug it into your exchanges. So let's say you're on Bittrex, which everyone seems to use these days. You can get Bittrex to issue an API, and it gives you a public key and a private key, and then you can hook that into to Coinergy, and tell Bittrex whether you want to allow it just to read your data, or to actually be able to trade. Because if you allow it to trade, Coinergy can actually make trades on your behalf from within Coinergy, which means that theoretically you could plug all your accounts from all these exchanges into this one platform, and trade from there. Obviously, that creates some issues because you're centralizing everything and you're trusting one company with your stuff. But if you're the kind of person that does a lot of trading, it could be a bit of a godsend, because you can get stats.
Yeah, sounds like something to watch out.
Yeah, well, you can get stats on how your portfolio is performing. You can see, what's going on actively in the market, and they've got a few different tools. Now, there are a few cons. It costs $15 per month. So your first month's free, but after that, you have to pay $15 a month. It's definitely not feature complete. Like, I feel like it's really still in beta. I don't think you could say it's really out of beta, just because there's a lot of stuff that's up there that's in their little menu that's grayed out. And I mean, look, they've got a lot of they've got some graphics for your own portfolio, but I feel like for the money you're paying, they're not as extensive as they probably should be. When I go in to look at my portfolio trends, I just don't feel like I'm really getting enough. And it's quite a steep learning curve. I think you've got to have some experience with trading before you just jump in. And you'd be better off cutting your teeth on Bittrex or Cryptopia or any of the exchanges out there that just let you just operate on that exchange. Cut your teeth on them, and then when you're ready, get the 30-day trial, have a look at it. But yeah, if you're brand new to this space or you've only been in it a couple of months, I don't think it's worth paying $15 a month. I just don't think you're going to get your value for money. I think it's quite a powerful tool, but like any powerful tool, if you've got a chainsaw, You need to know how to use that chainsaw properly before you just go turning it on. You won't lose a limb,
Yeah,
but I just don't think you'll be using it to its proper potential. So you can find Coinergy at coinergy.com. We'll put the link in the show notes. Remember, your first month's free. So if you do want to give it a go, you can always jump in and get your first month for free. So earlier this week, I had the chance to interview Chris Coney, founder of the Cryptoversity and the Cryptoverse podcast, and also the Chief Technical Officer at Kexcoin, the ICO we featured last week. So without further ado, here's our interview with Chris Coney. Today we have Chris Coney, who's the founder of the Cryptoversity, the online school for Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. He's also the host of the Cryptoverse podcast, and he's the Chief Technical Officer for the Kexcoin project, which is the project we featured last week on episode 2 of the FOMO show. So he's here to talk mainly about Kexcoin today. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, sir. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great, mate. I'm great. Thanks for asking. So look, first order of business, just tell us a little bit about how you got into the crypto world, first of all, how your journey brought you here.
Absolutely. So I think I was built for this, right? And what I mean by that is my degree is in computer science. It's a longer title. It's called Bachelor of Science and Business Information Engineering. So it was kind of computer science and information as applied to the business world. So it was quite broad in that regard. My father has always been self-employed, so that's where I got that exposure. And after uni, I tried to get a job for like 6 months. No one would give me one, so I ended up, starting my own business. So my career prior to discovering Bitcoin was in sort of like web design and that kind of technology stuff. So that laid the groundwork in my technical understanding. Meanwhile, one of my major passions was studying economics. I just had like a mad fascination with money, not because I just wanted to buy mansions and Lamborghinis. It was just something about the money system that I was fascinated by, and I started studying Austrian economics and sound money, and that wasn't my profession. I saw how to apply it in business, just the principles and so on. But that was kind of a preparation. I didn't know. Well, I always say, like, you never know what you're being prepared for. That's one of my sort of mottos. So when I discovered Bitcoin, it brought together all this stuff, like all the computer science stuff that I'd studied. And then there was this economic angle coming in. And then I was in business and I'd been an experienced marketeer and all this other stuff. And they almost seemed like roughly linked together. But then when I discovered Bitcoin, it was like this center point where it all intersected. And I was like, wow. It was almost like this was invented for me, right? Just everything I loved, everything that I'd done, all my experience, I was prepared to become the Chris Coney, now the host of the Cryptoverse and this quote, expert in cryptocurrencies and so on. So
it was kind of meant to be.
I believe it was meant to be, mate. I cannot believe how perfect it was. It was like it was made for me. That's the way I see it.
Right, so just tell us, before we move on, tell us a little bit about Cryptoversity then and what you do. What made you build your reputation in this space? Absolutely.
So during my own research, it was easier for me to get my head around Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because I already had foundational knowledge of the concepts like what the hell's cryptography, right? And all these kinds of things. What's a network? What's topology? What's consensus? What's proof of work? And all that sort of stuff. So I already had all these pieces, ingredients, understanding of the components. And that's the way I explain Bitcoin to people. I say, look, the invention is the actual recipe. It's the way that these pre-existing components were combined in this unique recipe for the first time. No one had seen them put together in this way before, and that became Bitcoin. So the big gap that I saw when I was researching it was like, because Bitcoin is so multifaceted, it is quite hard to explain to someone unless you have all these understanding of these pre-existing components. And especially if you don't understand the money system as it is, it's hard to understand what problem Bitcoin solves. So that's an even bigger learning gap, right? Between someone who's complete novice, hears about Bitcoin, but they also need to understand how money works first before they can begin to understand the profundity about Bitcoin. So that left me thinking, I'd like to get involved in this whole thing, but where do I fit into it, right? Where's my place in this whole thing? And I did this exercise out of a book that I read called How to Find Your Giftedness Zone. That was what the exercise was called, not the book. And it was like, email 5 people you know and ask them these questions like, what am I good at? What am I bad at? Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And just let them all come back to you on their own and see what the commonalities are, right? So I'm shortening the exercise here, but I did it with the 5 people that knew me the best. They all came back categorically with roughly the same answers. And that forms into what Perry Marshall calls your giftedness zone, right? And mine goes something like the ability to communicate ideas without making the student feel patronized or something like that. And that was sort of historically what I used to do with computer science with my fellow students and whatnot. It's overall being a teacher, but when I was at uni, sometimes it did feel like the lecturers were condescending.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a really fine balance when you're trying to teach somebody something. Obviously, you know what it is. You're the teacher. They don't know what it is. So there's kind of a mini hierarchy going on there. But the skill of flattening that out, so it's just you and me on a level, and I'm sharing information with you rather than teaching it to you. It's a really subtle skill that I think I have. And that's why the giftedness zone statement came out in the way it did, without the student feeling patronized or inferior or anything like that. Because some people don't ask questions because people don't like not to know because they don't want to look stupid, right? But whenever I've taught people one-to-one, they're just so relieved that I was gentle with them and that they got it and they didn't feel stupid as a result of learning something, right? So I did this exercise beforehand. So when I came across Bitcoin and asked the question, where do I fit into this? I thought, there seems to be a massive education gap here, right? I can see the size of the problem Bitcoin solves, but there's this big gap of understanding. And I thought, well, that's a crisp-shaped and sized gap, right? I can slot my giftedness zone right into that slot, right? So that's why I chose to get into the education business, built my first course, which was called The Digital Money Revolution, and then it's gone on from there.
And it seems to be the way, doesn't it, in this space? I know for me personally, when I came in, I mean, I'm quite educated myself, and I thought, I can really figure anything else. But I guess the concepts in this are so, you're dealing with concepts like cryptography and blockchain and all that kind of stuff. It was a very niche portion of the computer science market.
Yes, indeed.
Technology in general. And now you've got, hordes of people coming into this space and trying to grasp with it. And most of the concepts seems to presume a certain amount of knowledge.
Yes.
But no one really has,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you wouldn't ordinarily need to know things like what the hell's cryptography.
No.
I think it's because it's money, right? People really, really want to be able to trust it. And I believe that you don't need trust if you understand something, right? The trust comes from the deep understanding. And that was actually the basis on which I made the first course. It's not very applicable, the Digital Money Revolution course. You don't like acquire a new skill as the result, so you might say that's a bad course. However, my goal with that course was to give people sufficient confidence in how it works, so they would be confident using it with that knowledge of what's going on under the hood, right? If you just say to people, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's decentralized. No one controls it," people go, "Yeah, but how does that work, though?" Right? I'm not taking your word for it, especially not when my money's on the line. If it's email, people are like, "Yeah, fine, it's encrypted email. I don't really care how it works. It's private. That's good enough," because the consequences of your emails getting leaked are smaller than if someone hacks your Bitcoin wallet, right? Whereas if people are putting real money in, they really want to know how that thing is secured, right?
Yeah. So you're doing this cryptoversity thing and everything's going well. And then I was actually following your podcast at the time, the Cryptoverse, and you said, yeah, look, we've got this new project. So, and it's called KEXCoin.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about how you went from doing the cryptoversity stuff to then moving into this new project called KEXCoin and how the concept originated.
Sure, absolutely. So this has been like a lifelong bug of mine. It might be a dysfunctional part of my personality, but whenever I'm doing something, I never feel like I'm doing enough, right? Maybe I need a therapist, maybe not, but that's not important for this conversation.
Man, I know that feeling exactly.
You know what I'm saying, right? So it is what it is. That was there. It's still there. I'm working on it, but it causes my mind to constantly be thinking like, how can I provide more value? How can I do more? And it was when I read the book, like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that helped me write like a personal mission statement, which gave my life an actual purpose, right? So that I'm not just doing this cryptocurrency thing because it's the hottest thing, right? It's in direct alignment with the mission statement I wrote 10 years ago, right? And everything I've done since then has been in alignment with that, right? So that's why I started Cryptoversity, because it helps people, well, because the mission statement goes leading people to freedom through education and awareness. So when I saw the education gap in Bitcoin, I thought, oh, great, financial freedom for the world, and I can educate people. Boom, that's right on mission. Let's do this. However, despite, educating hundreds and hundreds of students and so on, I'm still like got that thing going on. Like, how can I do more? It's great educating people. It's great showing them how to make and save money with Bitcoin and all this sort of stuff. But how do I actually create opportunities for people? Like, how do I create the opportunities rather than sending them here and there to other services and so on? What could I do? And it was coincidental. One of the guys I went to uni with, Simon Lee, right? We were both in the same computer science class. It was odd. We met on the very first day of uni, which was like 16 years ago, and we've been friends ever since. And after uni, he set up like an eBay business selling like TV brackets or something, and then he's built that into a significant business, like serious business.
Right.
And I would always go and see him on like a social visit every few months or so on. And all we did was talk about business, technology, the internet technologies and so on. And it was on about the third visit when we spoke about, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And then the second time we did it. And then the third time when we spent the whole evening talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, the next day he calls me and he goes, Chris, I've got an idea, right? So Simon Lee's father, Michael Lee, owns a company called Kexgill, which is a British company that's 40 years old, and it's in the business of buying properties and turning them into student accommodation. Because Simon's from a city called Hull, which has got a big university there, right? So Kexgill owns 1,500 student properties in and around the Hull University and all across the north of England, right? So Simon's like, I've got an idea. So he says, Chris, what about this as an idea? What if we used a cryptocurrency to do it like an ICO, raise funds? We can build this big old student property portfolio using Kexgill's skills and connections and systems and processes and intellectual property. But instead of getting the money from the bank and paying the bank interest and all that liability, what if we brought it to the masses, right? And just allowed anyone who had some Bitcoin to participate in that. And I was like, that's a damn fine idea. So we knocked our heads together. We took it to Mike and Richard, who is the managing director of Kexgill. We presented it to them. We said, how about this? So we explained it all to them, because those guys are like several generations back. So we had to really take them through, this is the tech, this is how it works, this is how it's going to be, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, cool, right? So you mean we can have basically a debt-free portfolio, which will be highly profitable, that we can share the profits with all the crowd of people that helped us put it together in the first place. And we were like, yeah, that's pretty much it, right? And we don't have to deal with the banks. We were like, yep. And they're like, okay, let's do this. So they're like, we'll fund it. We'll fund all the marketing and everything, and let's do this. So that's where it came from.
Brilliant. And so the one thing I noticed was that a lot of ICOs around now seem to be building it on Ethereum, but you guys elected to do it on BitShares.
Yes.
Very early on. Can you talk to me a little bit about why you elected to put it on the BitShares network as opposed to the Ethereum network?
Barely see that question's the wrong way around. The question should be, why is everyone doing an ICO on Ethereum when that's not what it was designed for, right? Yep. BitShares was designed for exactly this purpose, right? It's a decentralized exchange with the ability to create custom tokens. It has a throughput. It can do thousands of transactions per second. And we proved it when we had like 180 Bitcoins worth of pre-orders on the BitShares decentralized exchange. And the minute the ICO went live, it just blew through the whole thing in a split second. Wow. And no one else on the BitShares network even knew it. Now, that might not have been a big enough opening on Ethereum to cause a problem. But on the Cryptoverse, when I've done live coverage of ICOs like the 10x launch and all these others, if there's any sizable ICO, it just grinds the network to a halt, because that's not what Ethereum was designed for, right? So I've got kind of a unique position, me being involved in KexCoin, I didn't want to just follow the crowd. I thought, what are the pros and cons of everything, and what's the best tool for the job, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to get conditioned by following the herd, right? And BitShares, to me, just seemed like the best tool for the job. And it was a lot simpler. People could use Bitcoin rather than Ethereum. And it just seemed, because I'm from a marketing background, I'm always thinking about the customer. What's going to be the easiest customer experience? And how do we make it so seamless that we minimize any chance of customers needing customer service?
Yeah.
Right? Because you know what I'm saying, if you need a huge customer service department, why? Right? There must be some kind of roadblock in the system that requires support. So I thought, if we solve that problem up front by making it really simple, and the network won't jam, the fees will be minuscule, so no one will be calling us up saying, why is my transaction not confirming, right? It just won't happen. It cannot happen. So we solve all those problems up front. So that was the main reasons why we used BitShares. And because it's got a decentralized exchange built in, as soon as people have their coins, they can trade them, number one.
Right.
But two, there's no delay. There's no like claims process. When I personally have participated in ICOs on Ethereum, it's kind of a disjointed thing. So they collect all the Ether into an address, and then sometime later, they then issue the tokens. And that's not for all Ethereum-based ICOs. But I was, again, thinking about the customer. I thought, if there's this gap between losing control of my money and waiting for my tokens, that's not a good customer experience at all. I don't want anyone being nervous about my project. So that with BitShares, if we sell the tokens directly on the exchange, which is what we're doing, as soon as the Bitcoin leaves your wallet, KexCoin arrives in your wallet. There's an instantaneous exchange. So you don't need to worry whether you're going to get your tokens or not. They arrive immediately, right? So these are all the reasons why I chose to use BitShares rather than Ethereum.
Yeah, and when you're talking about adoption and you know, and talking about widespread use, I mean, it makes so much more sense, doesn't it, to have a transaction process where you do instantly get back what you put in. You know, you get that exchange straight away, because I know personally, like with Ethereum, I've had shocking times sometimes. You know, I mean, even in the what was on the ones I participated in recently, EOS. You know, in the EOS token sale, you know, there's a whole process you have to go through to get your Ethereum even into the EOS blockchain, and then you have to claim that back, and you've got to make sure you've got enough gas, and it's like a 10-step process, you know.
Right, exactly. Here's another one. Here's another big one. BitShares doesn't use cryptographic addresses. It uses account names, right? So, like my account name is like Chris Coney.
Yeah.
So when you send and receive value on the BitShares network, whether it's Bitcoin, BitShares, or KexCoins, you send it to like Matt101 rather than XYZ, blah, 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 right? So there's that anxiety is removed by, oh, did I type the address correctly? Did I copy and paste it right? You can it's human readable, right?
Yeah.
And BitShares also has a simple account model where you log in just with your account name and a password. And I thought, well, people are familiar with that model, right? So all of these people that are just like too scared of these cryptographic addresses, they can just straight away go to the BitShares network in 10 seconds, sign up for an account, right, on the BitShares exchange essentially, and then just put the Bitcoin in the wallet, and away you go.
And mate, that's what really, I guess, really fascinated me about the KexCoin project in general. Once I heard about it from you and started looking into it, is that there's this real intersection of real world assets and the blockchain. You know, you're taking what's been predominantly, well, only a real world transaction, which is the buying and selling of property, and you're bringing in the blockchain space and you're trying to mesh them and put them together. And including with making it easy for people, like putting on BitShares and using account names, which might allow people that aren't very familiar with crypto but hear about this opportunity to get involved,
right,
and want to get involved. It might, like you say, make it easier for them too. So I guess one of the things that comes out of that then is, can you talk to me a bit about how blockchain specifically lets you do something different with this project? Because I know that in the real world you can take shares in a company, you can go into joint ventures with other people to do things like this, to purchase property. but what's the blockchain letting you do differently? And specifically, also talk to me a bit about. I think I saw something about the payment for rent in there with these kids.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's take the first part first. What the hell are we using blockchain technology for in this case, right? Okay. The automation of the accounting process, number one. So there's like no friction whatsoever. And also to broaden the reach. So technically, we could have just raised the money in British pounds and allowed people to use like bank transfers and credit cards and so on. But that would have restricted it to people in the UK who had British pounds. The whole point of taking it into the crypto world is it takes it into this country called the internet, which has this enormous population, right?
Yep.
And then it then allows anybody, like someone in the Philippines who only has $5 to invest, they can participate in the Kexcoin ICO and profit from British real estate, right? So we were like, sweet. That's the abundance economics of the internet. You'd only need like a few people from each country, like one or two people from each country participating, and then it becomes a viable project. If you flip that around and said, right, it's a UK only project, you need a much deeper penetration to reach the goals, right? So that's the beauty of crowdfunding on the internet. It's that abundance. Just this massive crowd of people can participate, and frictionlessly, right? Anyone who can get hold of some Bitcoin can get some exposure to this new property portfolio that we're going to build with the funds that we raised, right? So that was the first part of your question. What did you say in the second part there?
Yeah, so specifically, what really caught my eye was when you, in the white paper, started talking about making payments for rent with these Kex
Yes,
coins,
indeed.
letting people come in and prepay their first month or whatever on the specifically using Kex coins from their country.
That's right. So I think we got this idea from the community, actually, because when we first launched or announced it, we got a ton of feedback, and we've tweaked the model multiple times based on brilliant ideas from the community. And that's another great thing about crowdfunding. When people say, why did we even do a crowdfunding in the first place? It's the wisdom of the crowd. We have had some fantastic ideas that we've took on board and modified the model because you've got like thousands of brains on it rather than the 10 or so brains that we've had looking at it from the internal team, right? So we people were talking about how do the students benefit from this, and that's where the idea of, okay, so say you are a Chinese student, because there's a lot of Mandarin speakers come to Hull University and study and so on, and one of the ladies on the project, Michelle, who's the English Mandarin speaker, she's a finance analyst for Kexskill, but also she helps the Mandarin students when they're just far away from home and starting uni and so on. So we thought, what about the parents of these students, right? What if they could take some of their Bitcoin in China or wherever they are, buy some Kexcoin with it, and then they could either hold on to it until it goes up in value and then perhaps pay off their son or daughter's entire rent for the year, right? So they could just use it as like a remittance service, buy the Kexcoin and then pay the rent, or they could buy and hold it. And then over time, we'll get into the model in a minute, over time when that Kexcoin increases in value, they could make a call and say, okay, my Kexcoin's now doubled, so now I'm going to spend it and pay rent for my son, daughter, or otherwise for their accommodation, right? Which would be part of the properties that we're going to buy. So the parents of the students could do that, or the students themselves could even do that, right? They could section off a little bit of money into Kexcoin, hold it, and then it'll appreciate in value, and they're getting greater purchasing power, and they could use that to pay off some of their rent. And student debt's a big deal. It's a huge deal in the UK, and it's getting worse, right? Uni's getting more expensive over time, so we thought maybe that'll help out as well.
Brilliant. So you mentioned the model. Talk to us a bit about the model. How are these Kex coins, once they're purchased, how are they going to be used for the foreseeable future?
Okie dokie. So there are three main ways that people can profit from Kexcoin. The first one is by participating in the ICO itself. So what we're going to do when the ICO ends, which could be on the 14th of October, which is the 30-day mark anyway. So it could be then, or if we sell out before that, either way, that will be when the ICO closes. So when the ICO closes, there's this 48-hour window where we will pick a random time to take a snapshot of all the accounts that hold Kex coin and how much each account holds. So we've done that 48-hour window with a random time to encourage people just to hold the coins for a minimum of like 2 days after the ICO, just to guarantee that you are holding the coins when we take that snapshot, right? After that, you can do what you like. But if you're included in that snapshot, then you're insured of this first way to profit that I'm going to describe. So if you're included in that snapshot, you then get a share of the increase in property value over time. So even if you get included in that snapshot and then you sell your Kex coins afterwards, doesn't matter. You're in the snapshot, and then when we sell the portfolio at the end of the project, we will basically airdrop Bitcoin into that BitShares account that was included in the snapshot because you supported us at the beginning and you helped us build the capital to build this new property portfolio. We wanted to reward those people that supported us right from the beginning with that incentive, right? So you can still buy Kex coins on the open market if you want to in the middle of the project, but we really wanted to incentivize people to help us from the start because the amount of capital we raise equals the size of the portfolio we can build and equals the amount of profits we can generate and then share with people who helped us out, right? So always thinking win-win in that regard. So that's the first way you can profit. Now, in the meantime, what we're going to be doing after that is every time we get rental income from these properties, once every 3 months, we're going to take half of the profit that we make from the rental, convert it into Bitcoin, and then start buying back Kex coins from whoever wants to sell them. So that will be a specific day that we'll announce in advance every 3 months. And we'll say, like on the 3rd of March, we are going to come to the market and do the buyback. And on that day, say the buyback budget is like 20 Bitcoins, right? We will go to the exchange, the BitShares exchange, and we will look at all the people who want to sell their Kex coins, which, they'll all be there on the order book. And then we'll start buying those coins back. So we'll take possession of the Kex coin and give the people Bitcoin. And we'll keep doing that until we've spent the whole budget. In this case, what did I say? It was like 10 or 20 Bitcoins. Once we've run out of money, that's the end of the buyback. We come back in 3 months' time and do it all over again. Now, the price we pay for a Kex coin when we buy it back depends on you. So if you participate in the ICO and you buy a Kex coin for the fixed price, which right now is 0.0025 Bitcoin, you might buy it, and then immediately, some people already have done this, they've already listed their Kex coins for sale at double the price.
Right.
And then they're just going to leave it there, right? So one day, we're going to come to the market on buyback day, and if theirs is the cheapest order, right, if they're offering to sell the Kex coin back to us at the cheapest rate, we'll buy it back at double the ICO price, right? Or higher, right?
Okay, so the value is technically, I guess you could say that it's in a way it's tied to the sum of the rent that's generated from that 3 months.
That's correct. Every time we do a buyback, so once we've exhausted the budget, every Kex coin we buy back in that way, we burn. So we're reducing the supply of coins in circulation every time we do it. The reason that's important is because there's less competition for that buyback money every time we do it because there are less coins in existence. So the longer you hold it, the more scarce it becomes, right? It's because we're burning Kex coins every 3 months, burning it. So not only over time are the profits going to increase, so that's one line going up, excuse me, so that's demand for Kex coin, if you like, from us buying it back, but the supply is going to decrease. So you've got simple increasing of demand, decreasing of supply going on there. So the longer you hold it, the more it should raise in value. Right.
Okay. And so as time goes on, well, I guess even in the first round, those bids that are being made on buyback day. So say I've got a Kex coin and I want to put it up for sale back to Kexgill.
Yep.
Is my sale visible to everyone else too? So everyone can see what I'm offering. They can kind of work out where the market's sitting and work out where they want to put their Kex coins for listing.
That is absolutely correct, sir. So BitShares is an exchange like any other. So even now, you can go to the market, which is Bitcoin trading against Kex coin, and you can see how many buy and sell orders are there, just like every other exchange, Bittrex, Poloniex, it's an order book. It's a market. It's an open market. Now, they won't necessarily know it's you that's placing that order. It will just say someone wants to sell 5 Kex coins at, 1 Bitcoin each or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you'll be able to see let's call them your competitors, because essentially that's what it is. You're having to compete for that buyback money, right? So you can either hold longer or you can sell short. Depends what your circumstances are. If you want a faster return, then of course you'll accept a lower price. If you want a longer return, just wait,
Yep. Okay. But the Kex coin that are sold to other people obviously aren't burned, but the moment they go to the Kexskill account on those 3 monthly buyback days, then all the transactions that come to Kexskill, like all the Kex coin that comes to Kexskill, that's all burnt and it's gone forever.
That's right. Once we run out of money on the buyback day, the very next thing we do before we finish for the day is burn all those coins. So if we bought back 10,000 Kex coins, we destroy them permanently and then get back to work.
Okay. All right. And so this goes on for a significant amount of time, correct?
It does. So now this is another bit of feedback from the community. In our original sort of business plan, we'd set a project as a 15-year project. So we were going to allow the properties to increase in value over a 15-year period, and then sell them, and then distribute the money from the sale of the properties to those people in the snapshot we talked about a minute ago, right? But the first bit of feedback we got, in the Telegram chat, which is on public record if anyone wants to look back at it, and on the forums and so on, people were like, well, I'd really like to use this as a pension scheme. And 15 years only means 15 years of exposure in terms of the increased property value. And you know how the law of compounding works, right? It's an exponential increase. So the value of the property increase after 50 years versus 30 years isn't double. It's many, many times greater. Those extra 15 years don't just double the amount of property value. It's exponentially higher because of the law of compounding. So that was the feedback we got. We were like, can you extend it? So we went back to the drawing board, spoke to Michelle at finance analyst and Richard Stott. We did all the figures and thought, okay, we'll extend it to 30 years so that then it's got a lot longer to increase in value. And then as long as you've still got access to that BitShares account, because that's the thing that has value, right? That is the account we're going to send the money to.
Yep.
Whoever's in possession of it, whether it's you, your next of kin, whether you put it in your will, doesn't matter. It's just like any other financial asset, if you like, that you pass on, right? So that's what we're going to do. At the end of the project, 30 years' time, we're going to sell all the properties and take the proceeds and then return them to the people in that snapshot.
Right. Okay. So at the end of 30 years, essentially, those properties will be sold, and the proceeds will be paid back to those people that still have the coins, or will they be bought back by Kexskill and burnt?
I got you. Okay. So we've skipped to the third way to profit. Okay. So the people in the snapshot are not the only people that get a share of the proceeds when we sell the property.
Right.
The third way to profit is if you've held on to those Kex coins and you still hold them in your wallet on that final day, you're included in the share of the proceeds. Now,
okay.
You'll get a smaller share because there'll be fewer coins in existence. So the best way to get a greater share of those proceeds is to participate in the original ICO, because that's when Kex coins will be the cheapest, because they'll be most abundant, right? So the people in that snapshot will get a greater share of it. However, if you miss the ICO and buy some Kex coins mid-project and just hold them, you'll still get included. It'll just be pro rata. It'll be a smaller share of the final proceeds.
Right. So essentially what we've got here, Chris, is we've really got... Is this blockchain's first retirement fund as well? I mean, is that...
Maybe.
Is that
It depends what people use it for, yeah? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that honestly hadn't even occurred to me when I was doing a bit of research into the project, and I saw that 30-year buyback at the end, but it didn't really occur to me that some people would actually be saying, I guess because I'm a younger bloke,
right.
I want to use this for my retirement. But it makes sense because, and that's what really fascinates me about the whole project is it's really a way to get for a lot of people that either don't have the complete capital or are quite risk averse as far as taking out mortgages. It allows them to get into the property market without all of the other baggage that comes with getting into the property market.
Right. Exactly. And also, you're putting your money to work in a company that is not a startup. So Keckscale have been around 39 years. They, I think Mike Lee started with something like £70,000 in his first property, and because he saw the quality of student accommodation around the university was poor, so he just bought a property, did it up, rented it out, and it just went on and on and on and on to the point where now I think Keckscale have something like £120 million in assets. So that's from buying more properties, but also in the increase in the actual asset values of every 39 years. So I thought, well, why not leverage those expertise? The chances of any individual getting their money to work as hard as that are slim to none, because you just don't have the expertise or the experience. Mike Lee is 70 years old. He's been doing it 40 years, proven track record. He's got intellectual property. The actual criteria for buying the properties, that's Keckscale's kind of secret sauce. That's their closely guarded secret, which is the formula that is going to be used to identify, select, negotiate and buy these properties to make sure that they're highly profitable. There's this old adage in property investing that goes, you make money on a property when you buy it, right? So that's the key. It's negotiating the best deal on the best property at the start, because if you mess that up, it'll be a liability, not an asset.
Yeah. And Keckscale has the proven record to show that they've been able to put that formula in place.
Absolutely. And so proven, I'll shortcut another question that listeners might be thinking about, which is what happens if there's a financial crisis? We've been asked this question dozens and dozens of times. And I say, did you not hear me? They've been around 39 years. They've seen the crash in the 80s. They've lived through the 2008 financial crisis. They're smarter than that, right? They'll structure the portfolio in such a way that they not only weather the storm. In a previous interview, when Richard Stott was asked this question, he actually said 2008 was actually one of our best years, because when asset prices fall, companies like Kexcoin and Keckscale will be buying properties at a steal.
Yeah.
So that's an ideal opportunity to get some real undervalued assets. So we're not afraid of that at all.
Brilliant. And talking about Keckscale specifically, I know that another question that listeners might have is that, we're essentially giving our money to this company and letting them buy these properties and putting it on faith that these properties are going to be returned to us in 30 years. What has the company put in place to ensure that the future board members and the future people in charge of the company are bound by these promises and are bound to give these properties, the proceeds from these properties, back in 30 years?
Absolutely. Right. Good call. So we've written, well, our lawyers have written, I don't know if you have this you're based in Australia, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure how your companies work there, but do you know what an Articles of Association is?
Yeah, we have similar. So we have the companies, the constitution of the companies, and we also have the private shareholders agreement that bind the shareholders to do certain things.
Okay, the constitution probably sounds like the nearest thing, because we have shareholders agreements, right, which just lays out how the shareholders relate to each other.
Yeah.
But in the UK, we call it, the document's called the Articles of Association, which is basically a legal document that sets the boundaries on what the directors of the company can and can't do. So lawyers have written a 16-page set of Articles of Association that creates a specific ring fence around Kexcoin and the funds that are pledged to the project, which only allow us to do exactly what's in the white paper. So we're not allowed to do anything with the money other than build a property portfolio. And then if we, for some reason, sell a property midway through the project, we have to reinvest that money in buying another property, right? So we as the directors and controllers of the Kexcoin company, we're not allowed to take salaries, dividends, or anything like that. We're not allowed to take any money out of the company. The only way we get paid is because we have an allocation of Kexcoins for ourselves, which are only worth something if we make them worth something. So our incentive is entirely results-based, which is a little bit nerve-wracking for me, but that's what it is. It just creates a huge incentive to us to be on our game, right?
Yeah.
If your income isn't guaranteed, you really focus on what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. We've backed ourselves into a corner for a reason, right? So we can't wriggle out of it. But in the Articles of Association set out exactly what we can and can't do. And at the end of the day, it's a very long document, but it basically says all the things we can't do, right? Which only leaves us with what we can do, which is exactly what's laid out in the white paper, right?
Right.
Buy the properties, keep them, do the buyback, and then sell them at the end and distribute the proceeds.
And those articles of association, they'll be available publicly somewhere.
Yes,
people to see.
indeed. So,
Yep.
yeah, in the UK, we have Companies House. That's the government's organisation that is the company register. So it's companieshouse.gov.uk, and they have a little search box on there. So you can type in the company number or the name of any British company, and you'll be able to see, are the directors really the directors? What other companies do they have a shareholding in? What's the status of those companies? You can download the documents and so on. It's one of the benefits of us being a British company. It's a lot of paperwork, right? But while there is a lot of admin, there is a reason why that's all in place, right? That's what creates the stability for UK companies, is because you can't get away with anything in the UK, right? You just can't. And that's actually probably why we're quite prosperous, is because it's all very well managed and transparent, like Companies House. You can just, when someone's watching, this is like the thing, when you know someone's watching, it automatically modifies your behavior in a moral way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, we've got a similar thing here in Australia with I think ours is called ASIC, and you can pull up information from any company, download their records, their constitution. You can download, I think you can even download some of their audits, especially if they're publicly listed.
Right.
It creates this atmosphere of good faith, you know,
it does.
because people know that at any time someone can log in and see it all laid bare. And I mean, how many ICOs can you say that for, you know?
Well, that's the thing. What shocks me,
documents.
In the UK, you have to like list your company number and your address and all on the website so people can check you out. But it's weird, since most of the time I'm on the other end of ICOs, being the Matt, right, reviewing them or interviewing them and so on. This is weird for me to step the other side and be the inside of an ICO. And since I've done this and had to cross all the T's and dot all the I's, I'm shocked at how few ICOs you can actually contact. Like, there's no phone number. There's very few ways to actually contact them other than social media. There's no mention of like, where's the company based in terms of country, or what's the legal entity, right? It's one of those things where when you buy a Prius, you suddenly see a Prius everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like that. Since we've had to go through all these crossing the T's and dotting the I's, I'm attuned to it. And as I'm now looking at other ICOs, studying them, I'm like, oh my God, how are they getting away with this?
People are giving all their money to this. I mean, mate, it fascinates me as a legal professional just watching the euphoria in the space at the moment, and just how people are just not risk averse at all anymore. You know,
that's a good one. Let me pick you up on that, because euphoria, that makes me think of someone who's taken ecstasy, right?
Yeah.
And who is completely out of their mind on positive brain chemicals, and nothing matters, and nothing can go wrong. Everything's wonderful. It is almost like that. You know, you see the booming prices of cryptocurrencies, it almost triggers that euphoria feeling, right? And then you lose all rational control.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I mean, that's why I really like this project in particular, because so many of the projects you go on and it's just a web page, and like you say, you scratch below the surface and there's not much there. You know, there's a few pictures of a team and some great ideas, but this is a really forward-thinking intersection, I guess, in my view, of real-world legal principles, and which for all, you know, I mean, I know that the space is quite rebellious towards much of what governments do. That at least the people that have been involved in the space for a long time. But there's a reason why companies are regulated, and there's a reason why they've got obligations to share certain information and make things public, because. You know, that part of the space wasn't regulated at one stage, and people learnt the hard way that when there's no transparency, bad things happen. You know, right?
It's a very fine balance.
It is.
I can't remember who I was talking to about this recently, but I think it was Philip Kennedy from Kennedy Financial. He interviewed me the other day, and he was talking about what's my take on regulation. I said, well, as much as I'd like a completely free market that's unregulated, I think having no regulation at all and having like strangling amounts of regulation are as bad as each other. Because on the one hand, it allows absolute cowboys to run free, right? But on the other end, it just completely strangles innovation and only allows the Coinbases of the world that have like a compliance department. The startup just can't afford that, so they're as bad as each other. There needs to be like a little bit of regulation to set the guidelines as a bare minimum to just delete at least the worst of the worst, and then we can maybe get on from there.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Okay, so another question I had was, these houses or these properties that you are going to be buying, are people able to see them online, or are they able to look at the kind of places that Kexskill are thinking of investing?
Sure, absolutely. They can look at the ones that Kexskill already own, but of course, until we've finished the crowdfund, we can't say these are the ones we're going to buy, right? So because that depends on how much money we raise, what deals are on the table at the time, and so on. So, and even when we're negotiating, and we can't really reveal what deals we're negotiating because that's just bad business, right? Once the deal's done, we don't want anyone creeping in and start to take the opportunities away from us. So once they're done, we'll publish everything, right? Richard has already committed to this. We're going to publish absolutely everything. You'll get sick of reading it, right? We'll publish what we're spending, the properties we've got, where they are, yada, yada, yada. But if you want to steer on pretty much the type of things that are going to be bought, then you can just look at Kexskill's existing portfolio of student properties. Right. So that's something we've kind of skirted around. I talked about universities and houses surrounding it, but this is specifically building student property portfolios. And people say, well, why student property portfolios? Well, because of all the yields on real estate, it's by far the most profitable right now.
Okay.
And actually, it's odd that there's more and more traditional real estate companies jumping on the student property bandwagon because they are starting to see how well they yield.
And these student properties that are being purchased, I think I had a quick look into what Kexskill normally purchase. They're normally in quite big blocks, aren't they? They've normally, houses or complexes that have quite a few rooms, and it can allow the students to have a bit of a community within that area.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of the innovative things that Kexskill are doing is buying office buildings and converting them into student accommodation, which I thought was genius. And someone was like, why would you do that? And I said, well, think about just basic economics, right? If you've got an asset, you can purpose it in multiple ways, and you'll just purpose it the way that's most profitable. Now, if you don't have that vision, if you go, well, that's an office building, you go, no, it's not. It's a piece of real estate. It's a building, right? You can mold the inside to be whatever you want. So if converting it into student lets yields more than office let, well, any business person in their right mind is going to convert it into student lets, right? And the point where, if it was the other way around, if you had student halls of residence and office buildings were booming as profitability, you'd convert it the other way, right? It's not going that way, right? It's going the other way. So buying the offices and converting them to student lets is just a better use of that real estate. So that's one of the things that they're doing.
Brilliant. So, okay, essentially what we've got here then is we've got a way to get involved in property investment without the risks. We've got a proven company that's registered in the UK, that's auditable. There's public details on BitShares. I know you guys have talked about sharing a lot of the transactional details and the where the money's going on BitShares itself in a public wallet.
Sure, absolutely.
And you've got a team that's got a proven record and great success behind you. So, mate, it sounds like a really good project. I really like the sound of it. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
I'd like to recap on the team in particular.
Yep.
Wherever possible, we don't want people to rely on our word, right? Which is why we've been pointing people to Companies House, saying, look, go and verify it for yourself, right? Because that's way more persuasive than anything we can say. So the more info we can publish, the better. And the more information that we don't have to publish directly, better. So things like publishing the multi-sig wallet where all the Bitcoin is held. We published that in the white paper before we even launched anything. So we don't have to tell you how much we've raised. You can check it any minute you like, right? And if you see any money leave that wallet, you can ask us why, because we need to be able to answer that question. And none has left the wallet, and you can see it for yourself. Same with the BitShares account. You can see exactly how many Kex coins are in existence, exactly how many have been sold, where they've gone, how many's left. It's all there, right? So we don't need to. We do provide updates and announcements on that. However, we don't have to, because you can check it yourself whenever you want. And when we made the video, we purposely wanted to shoot all 5 of us in the same video, in the same place, at the same time, to prove, yes, we do all know each other. Yes, we're all involved in this project called Kexcoin, right? And yes, we all are on the core team. That was hard because coordinating 5 diaries for a day of a film shoot like that was a nightmare, right? Because we've all got more than we got Kexcoin, and we've all got our own businesses as well.
Yeah.
So doing that, but it was worth it because there you've got Mike Lee, the chairman, and then you've got Michelle, me, Simon, and Richard, all in the same Kexskill office talking about the same thing. So that, again, once we put that up, the main purpose of that is to say, look, yes, we're all involved. You don't have to worry about, right? We're all vouching, saying, yes, we're involved, right?
Yeah, man. I only saw that video this morning. Actually, I'd somehow missed it, and it blew my mind just because you never see that on the front of an ICO page. You never see, you rarely see it. Everyone in the same room together talking about the same thing.
That's because it's hard, mate. It's because it's hard work, right? And I guess we'd rather go overboard, right? Especially in this business, and maybe that's the thing with us. All of us, have had previous businesses, so I think that counts for a lot, to be honest. Because it's just the way we think. We thought we have to have this in place. And Richard came straight away when he said, "Yeah, let's do this." The second thing he said after "let's do this" was, "We want to become the gold standard of ICOs." That's the exact words that came out of his mouth. And he's said it multiple times since, because that's just how he does business, right? That's how he's built his reputation. That's how Kexskill has built his reputation. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Okay, so I've just got a couple of final questions for you, Chris, and they're a little bit more personal. The first one is,
go for it.
This space is growing, obviously, at an exponential rate at the moment. Where do you see the crypto and the blockchain space in 5 years' time?
Yikes. Wow, that is a tough one. It's funny, when there was someone that I met the other day who was launching one of these coins for the cannabis industry type thing.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's adjusted or climatized to the crypto space, because he talks in sort of like, oh, that was like 3 months ago. And he says that as if it was a long time ago. Yeah. And he said, oh, that was like 9 months ago. And I'm thinking, geez, that was only 9 months ago. But he was saying it as if it was a long time ago. But when I heard it, I thought, wow, that was this year. You know what I'm saying? So that's an incredibly difficult question to answer. Let me try and do my best to answer it here. 5 years from now, the key difference between what's happening today and what will be happening then is a much greater integration between one blockchain and another. I think that will be the humdinger innovation that completely changes the game. So these atomic swap things that Litecoin has been testing out, the ability to, in a trustless way, swap a Decred for a Litecoin, right? So those are two currencies, but all these blockchains are sort of fragmented right now. If once we start linking them together in a big, massive network of networks, that's going to be realized in the next 5 years, I believe, and that will create opportunities and changes that I can't even imagine right now.
And what would you specifically then like to see crypto change in the real world?
I personally, whether this is how realistic this is or not, is an increasing number of just everyday merchants accepting it directly as payment. I'm not talking about BitPays. I'm not talking about like coinpayments.net type of things where you convert it back into fiat. Actually, Coin Payments, apologize, they don't do that. But BitPay do that, where you immediately receive the Bitcoin and have it turned into dollars, right? The more merchants that can accept crypto as payment directly, that moves us ever closer to the holy grail of using cryptocurrency as the unit of account, meaning when we start pricing things in Bitcoin. Now, the listeners, I know already, a whole bunch of listeners when I say that are going to go, Chris, you lost your mind. Pie in the sky, mate, right? That's so far off. When you go into Whole Foods and it says, this banana is 0.001 Bitcoin, right? That would be my holy grail, because that means we no longer need to liquidate our crypto back into fiat currency, and that will create massive price stability and massive liquidity. So, and then we don't need the whole financial system anymore. Once we can earn Bitcoin and spend Bitcoin in Whole Foods, that will be a good day.
Brilliant. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being a very gracious guest. Where can we find Kexcoin?
You you can find it at kexcoin.com.
Okay, so go there, get involved in the ICO, check it out, check out the white paper. Do you have any other shout outs you want to do, Chris?
Not really. You can check out all the social networks on Kexcoin. Come and join us on the official Telegram chat group. I'm in there as much as possible. Simon's in there as much as he possibly can be. We're up to like 430 members now. And so you can scroll back through that and look at all the questions that have been previously answered or ask your own question. You're free to come in there.
Brilliant. Well, Chris, thank you very much for being a guest on the show and taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk. I really appreciate it, and all the very best.
I've enjoyed talking to you, mate. Thank you very much.
I really like that because they're a real world company, which is what kind of gets me. I'm like, well, these guys actually are real. Like, you can go to their offices and like, how many ICOs can you actually say that about? But
it's true. Yeah.
So that's about it for us here at the FOMO show. Bit of a different episode today, but we hope you've enjoyed it. If you know someone that might enjoy listening to us, please share the podcast with them. We'd always love to have new listeners. You can find us at FOMO.show. That's FOMO.show. You can jump on our Slack at FOMOshow.slack.com and have a chat to us. You can follow us on Twitter at @the_FOMO_show and at Facebook at Facebook.com/the FOMO show. As always, we'll put all those links in the show notes.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you for joining us and thank you for listening.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe. And as always, yes, remember, no FOMO. Lovely. That's the great thing about post-production, isn't it? You can just make yourself sound really smart.
I can make you say whatever I want. Just mix together some of your words.
Why do I not trust you when you say this? And I'm Joe. And this is the... Wait, what was I saying again? No, for... This is the struggle that I live with, you know. But on the one hand, I'm sitting connected to 150 meg Wi-Fi.
That's right.
On the but at the same time, I'm on a phone, and I don't know about you, but when I text somebody on a phone, I suddenly turn into my mother. It takes me an hour to send a message. Do you know what I mean? It's not even the southeast of England as well. I don't even know where I am. Anyway.
Mate, no one will know. They'll probably assume you're in Brighton or somewhere.
Mate, it keeps the HM